It doesn't feel like confidence to me. It just feels like me.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories.
So here's my story, and I'm super excited to hear your thoughts on this, because this is one of those things that the statement alone at the end of this is pretty profound, I think. But then it kind of turns my head round and round on a bunch of different things. Like there's a lot of layers to it. So, or not, I'll be really crushed because it'll be like, I don't think that's interesting at all. I got nothing, because that happens all the time. All right. So I was driving in the car and on Sunday, and I was headed to the grocery store. None of that matters in this story. And I was listening to NPR, and they were interviewing Joan Armatrading. Are you familiar with her?
I know the name, but
she's a musician, I believe, from England, somewhere in Europe. I think she's English, and I've heard her music a little bit. I'm not super familiar, but it was interesting because they were interviewing her, and she was saying that she writes the songs, she sings them, she plays every instrument, she does the producing, she does the arranging, she does all the engineering. Like she does 100% of what goes into creating this song. And so the woman interviewing her, Garcia Navarro, was saying, is that a control thing? Is that is it because you have to have it your way? And she's like, well, I mean, no, this is all me paraphrasing. She said, when I hear a song, when I write a song, I know exactly how I want it to sound, and I can play all the instruments. And so I know what I want it to be. And so there doesn't seem to be any reason to involve other people. And so then she was asking her about collaboration, and she was like, well, it's so interesting because you hear musicians talking about like how much they value collaboratively creating things. And she said, yeah, I don't know. I was never that way. She said, I didn't even learn to play instruments by playing other people's songs, which is of course how a lot of people learn. You just learn a bunch of songs you love to get more agile at it. She didn't even do that. She started off writing her own stuff. And so then she said, I know what I want, and then I make it happen. And so then Ms. Garcia Navarro said, what gives you that clear sense of yourself? Because I think many people would struggle with that. And this is where I was like, I almost pulled over because I was like, oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts about this. She said, I'm going to read this. She said, I don't know. I only know me, I only know this is what I know. This is how I am. I don't have any trouble being me. And then she laughed. She said, it just doesn't feel that, she goes, it doesn't feel like confidence to me. It just feels like me. And I had this kind of moment about, I've never really correlated the concept of confidence, which you hear a lot about in leadership circles, about having the confidence to whatever, and being yourself. And in some ways you can gloss over it really quickly, like, well, of course but they're not. And I think a lot of times people think about confidence in like, I want to stand tall and do this thing and get, like, they think about confidence in terms of like the external validation that comes back. Like it's rated, like, and confidence gets cannibalized because people are worried, but gets it almost in front of it because people are worried about how people will react to them. And so it kind of toppled the whole system of like, what if confidence isn't even a thing? Like, don't even worry about confidence. It's just standing completely central in just simply being you. And it doesn't matter. Like the most confident thing you can do is just be you and not be looking to either collaborators or listeners or whoever on the feedback side. I don't know. Is this sparking any thoughts here, or am I just nerding
I think
out?
that there are different branches that you can go down. So she was really talking about, I think she probably viewed music, what I took from this, her music, as the truest expression of herself. And if you assume for a second that that's what she wanted to put out in the world, the music that she heard in her head, and that she wrote everything and the lyrics, the music, played all the instruments, etc., because she knows what she wanted. And only if she does all of that will she achieve the truest expression of what she heard in her head. Mm-hmm. And so confidence for her was, I just have to be who I am, because mm-hmm. They align perfectly. In a business setting or many other settings, the highest and best goal isn't to be the truest expression of yourself. It might be to serve an interest, to serve a need, to fulfill something. So if sticking with music, if my highest and best goal is to put something new and unprecedented out into the world, mm-hmm. then collaboration comes into there. And I have to be confident enough to believe that I can contribute to that goal, but it doesn't have to be the truest expression of myself. I just have to do that. If leadership is to, I don't want this company, my company, to be the truest expression of myself. I want this company to be the world class at serving people I want to serve. Mm-hmm. Well, then, that's not 100% me, because there are things that I don't do as well. And I still have to have the confidence to form a company to serve that constituency and to go out and get the people that can fill in my deficits. She doesn't have any deficits given her goal.
Yeah. And I don't want to conflate, because I know I brought up the collaboration piece. I think that muddies the waters a tiny bit of what I was most fascinated by with this thought. Because yeah, absolutely. Like business and leadership especially is not a single contributor sport. Like it is a team effort, and you have to be wrapping other people in and getting that kind of feedback. But the confidence at the core of it, I've had a couple clients over the years, like, I had one that switched to a different company and took over a CEO role at a new company. And he had been more like a senior VP at other places. And he went in almost like, because he was feeling a little bit like lacking in confidence. So he went in like trying to put on this like CEO posture kind of thing, this because he thought that's what was he was filtering what he thought was trying to be confident through like this perception of what people needed to see. Like he was wearing a CEO suit or something, right. like a zip up suit, versus just going in and being really true to himself as someone. And the big difference in that particular example was he is somebody who normally leads by asking questions and being curious and drawing things out of people. This weird him showed up that I'd never seen before. He was like, I'm going to have a plan when I walk in and tell everybody what the next 6 months is going to look like. I'm like, who are you? This is not you. So the part that fascinated me about it was in the same way that I think people talk about trust or faith sometimes, that if you're defining it that like I trust or I have faith in a thing because they'll say, how can I trust this, or how can I have faith in that, when they actually are talking about it in terms of knowing, like I know this won't happen. Well, that's not trust or faith. And I think confidence, if it's run through this filter of having anything to do with the feedback you get, I guess, that maybe it's I don't know, maybe I'm just a nerd about how I'm thinking about it. No, I just think that's the disconnect. I think that she has eliminated the, am I good enough, or what do I have to do to be good enough questions, because she could go out there and be monotone for 5 minutes and still consider it a success if that's her truest expression of herself. Mm-hmm. Because she just decided that what I hear in my head is what I want to put out into the world. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, great. I'm taking my own conclusions from what you said, but I don't need anybody else who's not in my head is going to dilute what I'm hearing. So I'm going to do all of it. So she doesn't come at it from, am I good enough? Because she starts on the foundation of, by definition, if I do it in this area, it's what should be done. So let's take it into another context, because I hear what you're saying and I get it, but I don't think it's as so let's think of it in terms of public speaking. Obviously a lot of students come to your class in public speaking with the concept that they don't have the confidence to do public speaking, or they don't have, they're lacking confidence in their public speaking skills. I don't disagree that, like, in public speaking, it is valuable and important to get feedback on how you come off, and, you know, like, oh, that didn't really land. You might want to change that. So it's not just about putting on, you know, blinders and earplugs and doing your own thing, regardless of having, you know, to be good, or, you know, or have it land in the right way. But I think you would agree in this, that there is something about the initial confidence. Maybe that's what I'm honing in on, like this initial confidence to step out on, whether it's step out onto a stage or try a new thing. I think the barrier that comes up for people who think they are lacking confidence is there is almost like a workaround in not thinking about confidence that has anything to do with what kind of feedback you'll get. It's this just bringing what you know and feel. And like when you have people do that first speech, where don't you have like the very first speech just like something you care about deeply or something like that? Isn't it? Am I making that up?
I mean, that's my suggestion. They can do whatever they want, but it's something they care about. Yeah.
Right. So if the confidence that would come forward, if you don't worry a bunch about how, and just stand up there, own that, really centrally ground in what is deeply true for you about that, and just that will look like confidence, like that is confidence.
It is. I guess here's my question.
Okay.
What do you think? If you had somebody who is listening to her give her first performance of a piece, and let's assume that the person listening had incredible credentials, really knew what he or she was talking about in the music industry, production, sound, voice quality, instrument, whatever it is, whatever qualification that person needed for substantive feedback, that person has it. The question that I have is, if that person gave her feedback on how to improve, do you think that she would be open to it? Or do you think that she would be saying, I'm not changing anything because this is what I heard in my head, and I think this is perfect the way it is?
So I don't know. I would have to assume, and obviously I'm guessing, Joan and I have not hung out and chatted about her musical journey, but I have to assume that along the way, she has learned from mentors or guidance of some kind of honing your craft. And so I don't know if she doesn't, and who knows, maybe she gets feedback now. Maybe she has a whole quite elaborate feedback loop where she runs it through people who she respects. But I think I recall you and I sitting in your room when we hired that, I'm going to make air quotes, podcast expert person early on, who has worked for substantial, show things, like credentials wise. She knew way more than we did. And pretty much every word that came out of her mouth, you and I were like, nope, 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 nope. And I think had we listened to her, I don't think we would have the people who listen to us every week, because we would have snipped it into something that's not like our most, like exactly what we wanted it to be. And we had confidence in our vision of what we wanted, and we stayed really grounded in that. I will admit, that's almost embarrassed to say this, but there were some of the things that she said that I still have been like, forget it. But because she does have credentials, if it was just me sitting there and I didn't have that, that validation of you also being like, and no, I might have been a little bit tempted to be like, well, okay, maybe we should consider that. Or, I'm definitely not doing that one that you said, but maybe I should consider this more, rather than it just being a confirmation that like, she's not our person. And so maybe that's part of it, is if you're going to let someone's feedback erode your confidence and clarity. And that's why that's the real reason I care about confidence is when it dilutes or what is that word? Obfuscates. Thank you. Like, I can hear it, I can see it, I can't quite get my mouth to say it. It's blurring the vision of clarity and therefore keeping you from moving forward. You better be damn sure it's your person, that it's somebody whose opinion will actually move you closer. Her opinions, that woman we hired, would have moved us further away from what we were trying to create, not closer to it.
And so what strikes me about that is that to this point, the way I've been thinking about our conversation concerning confidence is that it's binary. You have it or you don't, rather than multifaceted, meaning you can have confidence and remain true to yourself. For example, in that podcast discussion, if the consultant, whatever, had recommended this different kind of microphone, or maybe told us that, the days to drop an episode is not Tuesday,
yes,
it's Friday morning, or that episodes should be 17 minutes and not until we trail off into silence, whenever that happens to be. So there are certain things that I believe we would have taken that input from somebody and certainly been receptive to somebody who knew what they were talking about. But we had, if you want to call it confidence or self-knowledge or whatever, to know that there were areas that, we're not taking, we want to show up as how we want to show up. And whether it's just like the musician or, some other leader, there are certain things where we're not going to take feedback, where the voice we hear in our heads, or the image that we have personally of how we want to appear in the world, that's all we need. And we don't need collaboration to tell us whether we're doing it right or not. So I think it's choosing your spots for confidence, rather than saying, I'm so confident that I'm going to handle this from tip to tail. That's where I got off the bus with the musician, because I was thinking that she was just, there's nobody that can contribute anything to this entire production because I've got it 100%. And that's kind of where I got off.
No, that's actually kind of, but actually even she wasn't saying that. She was saying, I don't think of it as confidence. I think of it as just being me. She's not super worried. She's not looking externally to she's like, I don't even think about it as confidence. I'm just sort of plodding forward, doing me stuff. And so I probably got on this track because I do hear it thrown up as like a very, well, I just like, or people say like, oh, that person is so confident. And so, like you said, first of all, I think it's not a binary thing. I think you could be confident in certain areas and super not confident in other areas. I mean, I always laugh at sort of where I am wildly not confident in situations. I could get on stage, I could be at an arena and they could say, oh, you two didn't show up. Would you mind singing something? And it probably wouldn't bother me to do that, which might look like confidence. But I take this, sometimes I take this movement class, this NIA class they used to have at Movement Lab. And sometimes they would do this like free dance thing where we'd be all on one side of the room and somebody was supposed to come to the front and just do some movement, a simple movement, just wave your arms or something very simple, not advanced choreography, but just be the person who picks a movement that everyone does as they move to the other side of the room and then someone else does it. I like my skin would crawl and I'd be laughing at myself in the moment being like, what is wrong with you? Like wave your arm in the air and walk across the thing. But I'd be like,
that sounds like a small slice of hell for me.
Right. For some reason that just like made me shiver me timbers. And so I think everybody, it's a mosaic of where people feel confident and where they don't, but also just, also not to give, maybe that's it, not to give confidence so much credence as this thing that comes first. Whereas like maybe it's almost like some of these things we've talked about where certain things are obliquely arrived at, like you can't pursue happiness, you pursue meaning, and then happiness is a byproduct of meaning. I don't think maybe you don't pursue confidence, you pursue like grounded surety in something that is just you being you, or what you want to create, or what feels right. And then doesn't mean you can't ever look up for feedback to improve or something, but that confidence comes through through taking action. And so anything that's getting in the way of taking action, I think confidence comes through a feedback loop, which sounds the opposite of everything I just said.
I think that's exactly right. I think that the most worthwhile exercise, at least in this area, is figuring out those places where you feel grounded enough and aligned enough that you don't need to enter into a feedback loop. that you're just going to present. So when, as you mentioned, I teach public speaking, and I also up at Heroic Public Speaking. I'm a teaching fellow there, but we also perform and we get coached. And so if somebody wants to coach me on a number of things, blocking and staging, or the movement, or the beats or pauses or organization of the story, I'm fine with that. But I had a situation where one of the coaches was basically suggesting a word change in something. And I was like, no. Yeah. I was listening. He said, do you mind if I give you a suggestion? It actually happened to be a story that I was telling for effect, and it was a funny story, and I know how I want to arrange the words, and I know where the last word has to land, and I know all this. And so he says, maybe if you said this, and I was just looking at him, and I was really trying not to show just absolute disregard for what he said, because that would be rude. But there were certain things there that I don't need you to tell me this. This is how I'm going to do it. And so if you want to call it confidence, and this is the point, I think, going back to your story, I didn't think of it as confidence, that I'm confident I know how to do it. What I thought of it is, this is how I tell this. Other aspects of it, I'll take feedback, and maybe I can do that more effectively, or this more effectively, or this didn't quite land with you. But what you're talking about, no, this is how I tell it.
Right. Because for you, I think, what I'm extrapolating here is even if someone said, oh, but if you change that word or do this, then, more people will this or that. You're like, no, not this. This has to be told this way. Or it reminds me a little bit of, I had this friend I used to, as I was churning big ideas for what I wanted to do with my business, I would schedule time at some point to meet with him when I would be spinning my wheels a little bit, because I would think I was being indecisive. And there's a version of indecisive that I'm like, oh, I need to speak to this one friend of mine. And because he's very opinionated, he's very quick to be like, no, you just need to do this, 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 and this. And what I would find is that I'd be sitting there looking at all these things, thinking I didn't have a super strong opinion. Like, I could go any direction here, or any of these would be fine. And he would come in and say, you need to do just that, that, that. And when I had that to bounce off of, suddenly, some of them I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm fine scrapping that aspect. There would be other places where I would suddenly just like rise up out of my chair and defend, like, no, I'm not getting rid of that part. I'm like, oh, look at that. I actually do care about that part of it. But I couldn't discern that without somebody trying to take that piece away. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, I'm not doing it without that part. And it would quickly kind of chisel, almost the way sculpture works, it would chisel away the pieces that I could get rid of. And it would leave me with this thing that I care. So I would love to hear from our listeners how you think about confidence, whether it's like a prerequisite to something or something that comes later, or just if you have any thoughts there. You can either text us at 410-632-6894. If you haven't texted us before, just make sure you do the second step so that we're actually able to text you back. There's a little confirmation of contact information there. That's 410-632-6894. You can get that also at our website, so here's mystory.com, where you can find a quick link to that texting, as well as a link to the Facebook group, which is the other place that you can correspond with us and the other folks in there. And I will say, I don't think I told you this, but I found, as I was cleaning out the things that I brought home from my office that I gave up, a big envelope of Starbucks gift cards that I bought one Christmas that I was going to send out and then never did. And they're still good. So I was thinking, between now and our birthday, September 1st, each week, anyone who joins who texts us and joins the text community, each week, I'll pick one or two names, including, so if you're already in there, you're fine. You'll be in the drawing. Every week, I'll pick one or two names and send people these Starbucks gift cards. And then we'll do something fun for our birthday. So
it is fun for our birthday.
So if I now have your attention, you can, if you join the text community at 410-632-6894, every week we'll be sending out Starbucks gift cards.
So I guess as we wrap up, my last question, considering we talked about confidence, is whether you're confident, whether you are confident enough to, try out your new sign-off.
Oh. I owe you Stay Fresh cheese bags.
Stay fresh cheese
Stay
bags.
Fresh cheese bags. And if you want to know where that joke comes from, you have to either text us or join the Facebook group, because I will do the reveal there. It's even funnier if you see where it came from. So Stay Fresh cheese bags.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
Which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts.
your stories.
Your stories.
You can find links to that group as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village,
Yes, it does.
we'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky
Ooh,
team.
yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of
Lovingly
ways.
snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us,
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything,
including wrangling us,
including wrangling us.
which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume,
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
and you've been listening to So Here's My Story.